If you're in the market for a cold plunge tub, you want to watch this video, because in this video, I'm going to talk about the top 12 factors you want to consider before making a purchase or build decision. So let's get right to it. Number one, maybe not the most important aspect, but an important one nonetheless, is aesthetics. You want to pick something that you like looking at, or that your wife likes in the environment it is. Back in the days when I decided to add cold plunging to my daily routine, if I would have proposed to my wife to add or to put an old chest freezer in our backyard, she would have said no. And she would definitely not have been happy with it. And so I believe that it's important to keep the peace between partners, but also to have something that looks good, that you want to get into. If it looks crappy and ugly and, it's just falling apart there in the corner, you're less likely to continue using it. So aesthetics are arguably not the most important factor, but they're important nonetheless if you want to have something to look forward to as far as getting into the cold water. Going down and looking at this nice wooden barrel or whatever it is, and say, okay, I'm going to get into this today. Number two is the brand reputation and warranty, especially if you decide to purchase a cold plunge tub rather than building one yourself. Now, warranty is obviously important. If something goes wrong down the line, you want to be covered. There is also the consideration that a lot of cold plunge brands have popped up over the last couple of years because cold plunging got so popular, and some of which might not be there anymore in 2 years or so. So you want to go with a brand, especially if you pay thousands of dollars for a tub, for a premium tub, that will be around in a couple of years, that can support you, that has the spare parts in case something breaks, because ultimately at some point something will break. Maybe not the tub, but maybe the chiller. It's electronics and stuff breaks. And so you want to go with a brand that is reputable, that has good customer support, that has a decent warranty, so you get at least a 12-month warranty on your tub, etc. Number three is the decision whether you want to buy or build. And that depends on several factors. Obviously, if you want to go the least expensive route, chances are building one yourself is the way to go. The problem with building is that the tub itself is not really the most important or the most costly component of your entire setup. Even if you get a cheap Rubbermaid or a stock feeding tub or what have you, use it as your cold plunge, you can get this for, $50 or what have you, that's fine. But how do you keep the water cold and sanitary? So chances are you might need a chiller, and that's really where the money is in most cases. Chillers are expensive, especially the premium ones that have proper filtration capability and that are powerful enough to keep the water cold, especially if you plan on doing back-to-back plunges, maybe between you and your partner. The main disadvantage really of a DIY cold plunge without a chiller, so if you really want to go the cheapest route, is that you have to replace the water frequently. At least every couple of days or maybe once a week, you have to replace the water to keep it sanitary, and you have to put in a lot of ice before every plunge to make sure that the water is at the desired temperature, because most tubs, even the insulated ones, don't hold the water temperature for very long. And if you buy a plunge, especially one with a chiller, you don't have to worry about anything. Filtration is taken care of, so you don't need to change the water very often. The water temperature is always at the desired level, so you can plunge whenever you want to without having to worry about hauling ice first. Number four is cost, and that's obviously an important factor for many because we all have limited budgets. The problem is with plungers, you can get them for $100 or even less if you do a DIY, up to $19,000, and anything in between really. The least expensive tub that I have at home, it's a very simple, rubber kind of inflatable tub, costs $150. The most expensive one I have, actually some of the three of the ones that I have, cost around $5,000. And again, the cost is mostly the chiller, the high performance chiller, but you can really get anything in between, and it's ultimately up to you. How much money do you want to pay for the aesthetics, for the quality of the materials, and for the convenience of having a chiller? That's really, what you guys have to, or what you have to figure out to see how much is it worth spending money on a high quality and ultimately expensive cold plunge. Or is it maybe better just to take cold showers every day? That's an option too. It's for free. It just costs you a little bit of water. Number five is insulation. That's important if you want to maintain water temperatures for extended periods, with or without a chiller really. And a lot of the very inexpensive tubs are not insulated, so you lose a lot of temperature very quickly. The insulated ones hold the water temperature for extended hours, for extended periods, like a couple of hours, sometimes even a couple of days, depending on the ambient temperature and if whether or not you have direct sunlight exposure. The second consideration as far as insulation is concerned is condensation. And that's particularly true if you want to have your tub on the inside. With a single wall kind of setup, the difference in temperature between the ambient air and the water causes condensation. That water is gonna, is running down and it's gonna accumulate on the flooring. Now that could lead to safety hazards like slippery floors if it's a tile or something, or concrete maybe, or it can create mold or mildew issues. So you have to take that into account. With an insulated two-wall kind of tub, it's less likely to condensate, and you end up with less water on the floor. Number 6 is material and durability. Very often the more durable materials, the higher quality materials last you longer. The least expensive tub I have is the same material as the inflatable ball that our kids use when they go to the pool. It punctures easily, it can tear, it might not hold up to direct sun exposure to the UV radiation for very long, it might discolor or, stretch, etc. The more high quality materials, like acrylic tub that I have, or the aerospace grade rubber or wood or stainless steel, will hold up significantly longer. The other consideration is if you use a plastic tub, make sure it's made out of a material like LLDPE that doesn't leach endocrine disrupting chemicals into the water, especially as the water temperature increases, with the direct sun exposure. If you cannot keep the water cool 24/7, but let the water temperature rise to ambient temperature levels, you risk that some of the plastics, from a regular stock tank or Rubbermaid tote, they might leach endocrine disrupting chemicals that mimic the sex hormone estrogen into the water, and that's not a good thing. You don't want to bathe in that and absorb estrogens, not a good thing. Number 7 is portability. Now, when I first got my cold plunge, I didn't really consider portability to be any factor whatsoever, because I figured wherever I put it, that's where it's going to be, period. But over time, I realized that being able to move the tub easily from A to B without draining it first, obviously, but without requiring help from someone else is a plus. And maybe that applies more to me than to you, because I do a lot of reviews and I need to rearrange stuff to take pictures and videos and all. So I move my stuff more often maybe than you would. But even so, consider yourself, what if you move, you need to, pack the tub and get it to your new house. If it's a big, regular acrylic tub, might be more of an issue than if you have something that can easily be deflated and packed, in a small carry case or what have you. So that's a consideration that I think you shouldn't completely ignore. It might not be super important, but I've realized the more portable something is, the easier it is down the line as my requirements might change. Number 8, safety features. And by that I mean something as simple as having a non-slip surface in front of your tub so you don't slip when you get out with your wet feet, but also something like a GFCI, a ground fault circuit interrupter, that some of the chillers have built in. But even if not, make sure where you plug in your chiller, if you use a chiller, it has an outdoor rated GFCI outlet, because having electricity and water in close proximity can be a recipe for electrocution. You don't want to have that. So make sure you have a GFCI either in the outlet where you plug in your chiller or directly built into the chiller. So if there is a short, you don't get electrocuted. Again, most importantly, or all equally important, is to make sure that you don't fall and slip getting in and out of the tub. So make sure you have non-slip surfaces and not slick tile or concrete flooring that when it gets wet, increases your risk of slipping and banging your head. Not a good thing. You don't want to pass out in the tub or falling into the tub and passing out. Number 9 is shipping. And by that I mean, how much do you pay or does the brand charge you to ship the product? Since plunges can be heavy, especially the chillers that typically are very heavy. And so if you compare, apples to apples, make sure you compare the pricing with shipping included. If the brand charges for shipping, many of them offer free shipping, which is great. But then the second aspect to that is, and nobody thinks about that, and I haven't in the beginning either, is what happens on delivery day. Because some brands, they, especially if it's a huge tub with a chiller and it might come with a truck, like a less than truckload or LTE, I think it's delivery, they just drop it off at your curb. And that curb might be up your driveway, and then it's up to you to bring the tub and everything down. And if that's heavy, you might need help from someone else or even 2 people. And then what happens with all of the packaging material, the styrofoam and the cardboard and anything in between. If it's a big tub, you might end up filling your trash can multiple times before all of that trash is gone. And there are a couple of brands like the Plunge, one of my favorite ones. they offer white glove delivery. And so what that means is the delivery driver actually, they come down the driveway and they then unload the tub and put it exactly where you want it to be. In our case, it was in our backyard. So he wheeled everything down to the backyard, set it up as we wanted to. He didn't, connect the chiller to the tub or anything, but at least he put it exactly where we wanted it to be. And then took all of the trash back with him. So we didn't have to fill up our trash cans, which was very convenient. Number 10 is size and capacity. Also something that I didn't think about because I figured, well, a regular tub should be good enough for me, I'm 6 foot tall. I'm not the tallest, certainly, but I'm, average height, I guess, for a male with fairly broad shoulders. And I've realized that in a regular tub, I cannot submerge myself fully. Something has to stick out, and that is either my chest, which is not a good thing, or my knees and my toes or my feet. And so if I scoot all the way down, my feet are going to be out of the water, which is not terrible, but it's much easier and more beneficial overall if your entire body up to your jawline can be submerged. Now, here is the thing. Depending on the shape of your plunge, there are barrel types, there are, smaller tubs that are taller. So I have the same, capacity in terms of water volume, but not as long as a regular tub. And so the taller they are, the easier it is to fully submerge yourself. So don't necessarily go by the length of the tub, but more the volume, the capacity on the inside. How many gallons of water can it hold? And that can give you a good indication of whether or not you can submerge yourself fully. And if in doubt, I would go with the larger one to make sure getting in and out is easy. You don't have to worry about scooting down or, if you're already freaking out because of the cold water, the last thing you want is, having to worry about how to position yourself properly. Number 11, one of the most important factors is temperature control and cooling performance. Now, there are, different ways on how you can cool the water. I prefer using a chiller because I can set it up, I can dial in the temperature that I want, and I know the water is always at that temperature. I don't have to worry about anything. Chillers are expensive, however. So if you don't go with a chiller, you need ice. And there are 2 types of ice that work. You can either get ice cubes, and when I first got the ice barrel, which didn't come with a chiller and even no chiller connection or nothing, I got 60, 70 pounds of ice from Walmart, just those 20-pound bags, and I dumped them in. And by the time the last bag was in, most of it had melted already. And I realized that for every ice bath, I needed about 120 pounds of ice cubes. That's a significant amount of ice. That's not inexpensive. I paid over $30 to get that ice and dump it in, and then it was gone within, I think, an hour later, the last ice cube had melted. And so that's a significant financial investment, if you have to spend, $30 every day for for cold plunging. So you need to get an ice maker, right, if you want to go that route. The problem is most residential ice makers, even if they may be able to make 100 pounds of ice a day, they don't have the holding capacity to hold actually 100 pounds. So they might hold 30 pounds or 40, and then it takes them hours to get another 30 pounds. That's not going to work for you because you need 100 pounds plus at a time. So you need a commercial ice maker, which can probably cost you a couple of $100 that you need to take into account, right? The second option is to use block ice. Now, there are silicone molds that can hold, 7 pounds or so of ice. At least the ones that we have can hold 7 pounds. And if you have a couple of those, maybe 3 or 4, you can make, 21, 28, whatever pounds of ice. And if you put that into the tub, that ice doesn't melt as quickly as individual ice cubes. So that's the way. You need less ice, less volume, and it lasts you for longer and it has a better cooling performance. The downside of that, of course, is it takes up freezer space. The other day when my wife opens the freezer and saw several of those molds full of ice, what the heck? I need the space for the meat. So that's the downside. So that's why I really prefer going with a chiller. It's set and forget. And most chillers also have water filtration capabilities, which is our 12th factor and also one of the more important ones because you want to keep your water sanitary. You don't want to have stuff growing there, pathogens, bacteria, etc. You want to have clean water to plunge every single time. And so if you don't have a chiller, that means regular water changes. Now, you can use non-toxic water treatment products that are free of chlorine and bromine. They can extend that water for a little bit, maybe for a couple of extra days. But the way before you have to replace the water. And if you do that, dumping 100 gallons of water and refilling it is not only time consuming, but it also increases your water cost, especially if you're on a public sewer where you pay sewer fee for every gallon of water you consume. Whether or not you put that water back into the sewer or not, they don't really care, at least not here where we live, So that can get very expensive quickly. And so I prefer having a chiller with built-in water filtration capabilities. The better ones have or use a combination of a sediment filter as well as ozone. Ozone is one of the most effective ways to kill pathogens, on contact. And so that's why it's used in pools and other settings. It's used in dental offices. And so all of the chillers that we have ozone filtration or ozone sanitation built in. And so that water constantly recycles, it moves, it's not stagnant water, and it stays clean for months. I replace the water in our plunges maybe once every 6 months or so. And that's significantly better than having to do it every couple of days or every, week or so, weekly. Now, here is the thing. If you're like, well, a chiller would be great with a filtration system, but I don't really have the money right now, I would encourage you to at least purchase a tub, if you buy one, that can be hooked up to a chiller, because then you already have everything good to go, and you can then purchase a chiller later. You can pick whichever one works best for you. There are less expensive ones and more expensive ones. You can get a chiller for a couple of $100 up to a couple of $1,000 if you want to get a high-end, chiller with sufficient horsepower to really keep that water cold, especially if you want to do back-to-back plunging. But that's really it. Those are the 12 factors. I hope there was some in there that can help you make a better purchasing decision before you waste or spend a couple of $1,000s in a worst-case scenario, even more, on a product that doesn't really work for you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Check out my blog post where I go into even more details on those 12 factors, and I hope I'll see you next time.